So we have questions that you might like to throw at any one of these three people.
Do you want me to start, Phil?
Yes, go for it, Dave.
It's for Adam Twigg because of a name connection. I go back to I think it was the early 1980s, I've forgotten the date, but we had a wonderful Grassland Society field day on Bill and his brother's property at Bears Lagoon. The big theme of that field day was a new farming system to a lot of people based on dryland lucerne. I just wondered how far that has gone, or has it died in the interest of new developments?
Yeah, I'm not from that twig strain. Everyone seems to associate that, so I can't really speak for them that well. But there's still a lot. You only got to drive past their area, and they're still doing a lot of dryland lucerne. It's still a good system for them. Yeah, all those guys, and it's all the neighbours are doing it. Plenty of people are doing it up our way as well, but it doesn't seem to persist quite as well, dry land up home, I don't think, as what it does down there, and that might come down to our soil pits and only having a shallow root zone. The lucerne can push down, according to Christian, into that hostile soil a bit, and cracking and drying can help improve it. But it's still, if there's not a good reserve of moisture, you know, the lucerne might only push 10 centimetres into that layer, and then it's still going to run out of legs anyway. So we don't seem to get the persistence that they get down Serpentine Way and Bears Lagoon Way, I don't think.
Thank you, Colin Smith, and the facilitators know me quite well. If you're walking down the halls of Canberra with the Honourable Michael and the Prime Minister, and you had three things that you could tell them, what would be the takeaway messages you want to give to the two gentlemen walking down the corridor?
Funding, funding, funding. I mean, honestly, for bang for buck, how much money we've spent on this program is nothing compared to the result or the sowing of the seed, as you've probably heard. And what I've got out of it is a lot, and I'd imagine the rest of the farming communities that have been involved in this have got a lot out. So the biggest hassle I can see is, how do you quantify that? And that is the hardest thing to quantify. And I think commercially we've been going down, we've scratched the surface of how to farm our country, and the commercial industry has pushed some boundaries, but these groups, the commercial industry is on a personal basis, whereas these groups can get together and talk like they used to in the 1920s, the 1910s, 1850s, helping each other out. So if we can get some more funding and start more of these groups up, and there's one thing I must stress too, is that the groups are only as strong as the members that are in them. And I was lucky enough to have a really solid group of guys and girls that wanted to learn more. So, and I know other facilitators have found it difficult in certain circumstances. But, so, yeah, my answer is funding, funding, funding.
Yeah, I guess supplementary question to Colin's question. I mean, we almost had you walking down the corridors with the Prime Minister. Craig, we sent to Canberra last year to talk to the senior guys in the National Land Care Program, and he was really the only farmer in Australia, basically, that was given the opportunity to actually do that. So do you just want to say a bit about what you got out of that, or what they got out of that?
I suppose I grew up in a small country town and didn't realise how politics work. And to go there and to discuss, as I call it, such basic learnings on a local level, And I actually had a couple of people come up after the speech and just say thank you. It's good to see that money is getting well spent in the right areas. But as I reiterate, it is really, really hard to put a number on a percentage of how much that affects in the long term. And I think at that stage, Barnaby Joyce and the rest of his crew were just trying to work out that, if by doing such and such we get a 20% increase in yield, or we're influencing farmers to do other practices. So, but I leave that to Michael and all the rest of his parliamentary people that he knows, and hopefully we've got a great advocate in Michael in soils, and I'm glad that we have, because we need people like that to push those boundaries and push those people to understand to spend the money in the right areas.
Rowan.
Rowan from the CMA. You've all three of you have demonstrated some really great outcomes over the period that you've been involved in the project, but I'm interested to know, will the groups continue, or will what are the long-term benefits that you're going to see in your communities from this program?
Frankly, the guys up at home, this is only from the Witchy Proof group, they said no, they're not going to continue. They'll still talk together. There's little segments within those groups that will trial things together. And the biggest reason being is that they're busy. They're terribly busy. They've got all this information flowing in. They've got a lot of those guys up there are finding it very hard to get good help, and they try to do everything by themselves. So, the average farmer up there is roughly between 5,000 and 7,000 acres now, and it's just usually him, and occasionally he gets a casual, or he might have someone else, one person else, and to put time into something else as well as they're doing all this volunteer help, as in running the football clubs, running the netball clubs, running the CFAs. And in our case, I mentioned yesterday, in our case, that when I left the farm, I took 2 girls out of 5 that were on the school bus. And a generation ago, when I went to school, I was one of 49 kids. So that's just one generation, how things change in that local area. And we're still doing, the community itself is still running, your Apex, your Lions clubs, your hospital committee, and all these sort of things. And with these guys, they just haven't got the time. And they'd love to have the time. So when this group came along, it was a given. It was a great thing for them to be able to hook into something, because something was organised for them. They didn't have to organise it. And apart from just turn up at the local hall, have a discussion, can you go and do that? Can you find those sort of experts? I feel sorry for the group that it's going to get to that stage, but there is a legacy there, and the legacy is that we've done all that hard work and that reporting. So that's there for another group to kickstart another group.
I guess this goes back to, for those that were here at the dinner last night, the question that Cole Smith asked me about the legacy of the program. And I pretty much gave the same answer. The groups across the board need a strong level of support, basically, to make this actually happen and this to continue. And you can't have programs that run for 2 to 5 years and you turn it off, and then 5 years later you basically try to get it going again. We've heard that message again and again. So from a CMA perspective, I guess we do need to find some way of having some level of ongoing support. Gary Pollard, who's part of the Witchy Proof group, said to me immediately after the dinner last night, "Phil, go and find us some more money." Yeah. You guys comment on that?
I'll just comment on the keeping it going thing. I said we've got like the Birchip Cropping Group now facilitating this pulse group, so that's sort of one thing that's going to continue on. It's only focusing very narrowly, obviously, on pulses, but the other side, I think, because I'm getting so much out of it and I'm still farming there and got a lot to gain. Like, we've got contacts like Rebecca Mitchell up the back here with the department. Like, we might be able to still try and organise things that don't cost, or, you know, and working with the department or other groups like that. If I can be organised. The problem with that is I know what I'm like, and I might have all great intentions, but whether it happens or not's another thing.
And Marion?
I don't know if that's working. Actually, does that work?
Try that one.
Thanks, Phil. I think that's probably the unique thing about our group forming off an existing group. Whilst we mightn't be going forward with as much focus on the soils, like the Timor West FFS group, as per se, the Timor West Landcare group will continue, and we'll try and protect the information and that what's been gathered in that time. And knowing my passion for soils, I don't think that I'll be stopping in this space in my lifetime. Hopefully, I mightn't be doing it in quite the same role or whatever, but Mark and I think we're in it for the long haul. So yeah, hoping that I can carry through what we've built up so far and it not just get lost. But as the guys have touched on, it's really hard to do something in a very short time frame and then not have funding to keep that going. So yeah, that's sort of what will be what I'd say in the halls of Canberra as well, that you know, that time frame issue is yeah, building it up and then it sort of goes nowhere. So it'd be good to see that more stuff like use the synergy of existing networks and continuing networks to keep the information yeah, being sought after and built on for years to come.
Can I just add to that? Wendy Sims, Lockington Landcare FSS. We lost our funding 5 years ago, perhaps, Phil, somewhere around that vicinity. And at the time we had, say, 40 on our books. I still have 40 on my books, and every year when we do our renewals, I say, do you still want to be in it? And they go, yes, please. If I get a really good speaker, I'll have 30 turn up to my meeting, and on a regular meeting, we meet every second month, and we're still getting around 15 to 20 coming. So we had to have that start to get us going, but nobody wants to not be still on my mailing list in case they miss out on something. And the other thing was the probes, the rain probes, and we've got full weather stations spread throughout ours. It's an internet site that anybody can go onto, and everyone in the district uses our rain sites.
Probably helps, Wendy, when you're the mother of Grant Sims. Speaking of Grant Sims, you probably picked up that all three of these groups have been over to Grant's place at least on one occasion, and you know, it helps to have somebody like Grant, I guess, that's iconic in this kind of area. And I don't know how he gets any work done either, basically. Can I just correct something that we said earlier? Grant is actually the president of the Victorian No-Till Association, not the vice president.
Question for you, Andrew Sneed here. Do you see your groups being able to use the big data that's being collected? I know you've got moisture probes and now you've got yield maps. People aren't using those. Do you think you could incorporate that into your groups?
I'll start from the perspective of the Timor group. I have a larger demographic in my group that I've got people from like from Landcare background, or like some professionals like teachers or retirees, that type of thing. So it's not all just active farmers, and so I get a lot of viewpoints in terms of what we should be looking at in terms of that field and technologies and things like that. And because we're not big croppers as well, we probably don't have the same level of data collection in that type of field as well. So we've actually put in some soil moisture probes and weather stations, and we can see in time, and we did a bit with NVDI imagery and that type of thing. We didn't have the funding to be able to delve too far into these things. A lot of what we did were demonstrations as opposed to replicated field trials. So it was really to measure. That was probably the harder bit with a shoestring budget, to try and to measure what was going on in a very short time frame. So, but again, this exercise is really good in trying to familiarise people with what's out there. And so that is a learning that they can continue on with themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, Witchy-proof group, there's probably 3 or 4 guys got yield mapping. So we have done trials, and I didn't put the slides up, but there was quite a few trials that had yield mapping on it and imagery and the whole works. And in the case of one of those trials where the foundation, we used a product called Foundation, which is basically an acid that releases more fertiliser or nutrients to the plant. And we found that there was a 10%, 11% increase in yield. And it worked out to be around about $50 a hectare better off after all the costs were taken out. So we're going down that stream. We're still going to, this year, using that product and looking down that side of things. So yeah, we are doing that technology side of things. So I unfortunately had too many slides and I couldn't put it in, so sorry about that.
Yeah, the only thing I can add in our group, we've only really got 2 guys that use yield mapping. There's quite a few guys that have the capability, but sort of, yeah, they don't follow it through. But there's 2 guys that are right into it, and they're doing heaps of their own trials anyway and using their yield mapping to do that. And one guy using his yield maps is working with his agronomist, and he's just started doing variable rate spreading with his lime and things like that this year. So, and there was also a bit of Verus mapping, which is sort of it's EM38 technology, but it maps pH and EC and at different depths, and so he's also using those maps as well to get that sort of data. So, but beyond that, that's probably about where it's at the moment in our area anyway.
Yeah. Tom?
Yeah, it's on the sustainability, and it's not so much the soils, although it's indirectly. Craig really mentioned something there, and I'd like to highlight a little bit more on response to Colin's question, and that is labour. We need the skills, and if I was to meet somebody in Canberra, it would be get the labour. You got the labour, that gives you time. You got time, then you can go to these sorts of things and communicate and do all that sort of stuff. You know, we personally employ about 24 Filipinos. Without those skills, we would be dead in the water. So we really need good, skilled labour.
Yeah, I can sort of back that up, because every time I go to Witchy-proof, and I'm a fencing contractor, and they ring me up, can you come into can you wool class, can you rousey? I find it hard. I just had an employee leave, and I found it terribly hard to get someone part-time fencing in Bendigo. So I know where you're coming from, and I know the guys, as I said, they weren't, you know, the wages are going up because they have to put them up to get reasonable people on their machines. And when you're sitting on a $250,000 tractor and air seeder, and one mistake, it can be very costly. So, yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from.
Di, I think we might give you the last question.
Hello everyone, Diane Mullins, Timor West Landcare and FSS Group. I'd just like to say, as a group some time ago, we decided to document our projects so that they're here for everyone to see and a legacy for the future. You've probably noticed Phil Ashton in front of me here. He's been here both days. We've engaged Phil to document our projects. He's been capturing what's been happening, interviewing people, and we hope to have a premiere in the future where we'll put out the red carpet in front of the Bowen Vale Hall, invite people to wear their dinner suits and long gowns, have the ukulele group that Phil heads up for entertainment, and we will celebrate all of our achievements thanks to the FSS program and project. Thank you.
Thank you.